Hey peeps, Amma here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be talking about a very important topic that is affecting Black communities, not only here in South Africa, but across the world. This is going to be about how modern day dating is affecting and has continued to affect Black communities, which often leads to a lot of women and a lot of men single and not married, and which this at the end may impact the community and how the future generations are experiencing the way of living in terms of finances and just happiness as well, because we live in a very much economic driven community or society. And so the modern day dating does actually at the end impact on our economy and how the future generations will experience it. So this is a mouthful conversation that I will be having with Justin. So please be sure to stay tuned, because Justin is passionate about relationships and he's got so much to share. So stay tuned for more. For today's conversation, we are joined by Justin Hansen, and we'll be talking about modern day dating and how this has an impact on Black people. Justin, thank you so much for joining us. It's such an honor to have you share your knowledge about this.
Hi, Amma. Thanks again for having me on your show. It's quite long overdue. And yeah, I look forward to having a great discussion and hopefully something that turns into a debate in your comment section later on. But yeah, quite happy to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been also just wanting to have you on the show. I mean, you're very opinionated about these things, and it's quite nice to share this with the broader audience, specifically my audience. I think we're going to love this. So, as just my first question here, you are very interested into relationships. I mean, I can call you a relationship enthusiast. I know you are also so much into entrepreneurship, but just to touch more on relationships for today, what inspired you to develop an interest in such topics, like in things like modern day dating, and particularly on how this has a relationship with Black communities?
Yeah, so my interest in this all stemmed upon my own dating life and observations of relationships around me in the modern day era. First back in my parents' and grandparents' time, and just how things have changed over time. So for me, it was about, just understanding the differences and which of the two work better, and how we've just got to find a way to agree with each other, whether or not it comes from working with the old or being able to find some kind of a new way of working together, and in relationships, in married relationships as well. So, I mean, just to give you a little bit of background on where that from itself is, about 2-3 years ago, I read a very interesting stat published by Stats South Africa around divorces in South Africa. I forgot which year it was, but it indicated that about 60% of divorces in South Africa are initiated by women, with 45% of those reported being filed in the Black community. Now, there's a statement in everyone's mind that comes here, just given the state of our nation and affairs, saying that, like, what about the marriages that have been annulled due to domestic violence? Although domestic violence does contribute to that 60% that I mentioned earlier on, it doesn't make up some of the top reasons around divorces for some of these couples, which are mostly around, like, your finances and your infidelity, which in themselves are issues. So, I mean, in a nutshell, I would say my interest in these matters came from trying to tie these three things together. So the three things being why my own relationships and dating weren't going well, including those of my peers, and trying to understand why is it that divorce rates in the modern era or modern days have spiked up, more specifically in communities, for reasons that are not related to abuse. And lastly, could there be a correlation between this and, why we as a Black community are more divided now, more than ever? So yeah, that's it in a nutshell, Amma.
Yeah, let's focus on Black communities. I know you touched a little bit on that, and I think it's very important to touch mostly on Black communities, and I understand why you were very interested to look at how, as the Black communities are affected by modern day dating. I mean, we in South Africa, for example, I mean, most of people in the country are Black, so it is relevant to focus on Black because we are the leading population. So how can you perhaps maybe share a relationship? What's the relationship between Black people and modern day dating? How is modern day dating affecting Black communities?
Yeah, thanks for that question. And it's such a personal subject to me, this one. More than to do with my dating and relationship life, and more than to do with the dating and relationship life of Black people. It has to do with the fact that, I am an entrepreneur. I have various dealings in the world of business, not only in South Africa, but in Africa as well. How I can break this down is, in a nutshell, there's numerous industries that are actually profiting from Black people, comfortably living on their own with no families. Note that I say Black people because on a like-for-like basis, if you're looking at the stats on a like-for-like basis, Black people are less married than any other race in South Africa. There's a slight caveat in that my stats are not updated for customary marriages and any other type of marriages up until 2021. But the point that I'm trying to make is a little bit more important here. So on a small scale, I always like to give the example of when you go grocery shopping, for instance. The way that groceries are designed, it's pretty much for families of 2 or upwards. So a lot of wastage happens if it's only single people that are buying. That's on a very small scale, right? But when I look at it on a broader scale, I now look at communities in general, right? So if we have more Black people working together in relationship with each other on a similar level as other communities, it means that we'll be able to build bigger communities and have networks in amongst ourselves, in order to build our own industries over time, which I see is extremely critical in order to, help in terms of the elevation and the emancipation of our people. So, yeah, I mean, then again, like similar to the impact that apartheid had, in terms of the Black community and other shades of Black community, like your Indians, your coloreds, etc.
Yeah.
Lots of these industries were and are reliant on keeping Black people apart. Like the old quote goes, divide and conquer or unite and build. A lot of the former still goes on from the wounds of apartheid, and we need more unity in order for our people to elevate. Where this starts, you ask me, starts from the question that you asked me. It starts from fixing the Black family. Once we start fixing that Black family, we'll be able to go up into fixing those communities, and we'll be able to elevate ourselves to be able to, emancipate ourselves from not only a, general freedom perspective, but also from a financial perspective, which for me is absolutely critical.
Yeah. Justin, maybe let's just put this in like simpler terms. Are you saying that modern day dating is affecting Black communities negatively because of how it continues to separate the population? Is this what you're saying?
Yeah, so that's pretty much what I'm saying. And I'm saying that it's something that we don't see right now, but I feel like there's going to be a multiplier effect down the line because of the small erratic decisions we're making right now around our dating. So we see it as, something that we're just doing to pass time, and we're not very intentional in it. We're very, we'll see what happens and we'll see where this goes, versus our counterparts in other races that are taking this very seriously. And, I really, it's just a matter of concern for me in terms of that long-term outlook for how we look at ourselves in terms of our relationships between ourselves. Again, like the project of apartheid, it didn't only do well in dividing the shades of Black people through the Group Areas Act. It manifested its way into dividing the African home. Minors were away from their families for months, And through that and various things, including, cheating from a male perspective. And I'm definitely going to hold men accountable for that. And the growing emancipation of the African housewife who started to think that, she didn't need a man because of the government was there to support her through social security or a boss through a salary. So, in my opinion, this kind of resentment internally in the household, it got passed on from generation to generation to a point where not all, but most Black women versus their white Indian colored counterparts dwelled on that, that independent woman notion that I don't need a man notion, which again, it wasn't fully on their part. It was also on the male's perspective from, being away for too long, being adults when they're away as well, which that for me was a massive sort of thing that contributed to this as well.
Okay, so so now what do we do to fix this? Are you saying then we need to stop following the modern ways of being in a relationship, the modern ways of how people should act in marriage, but people should try and stick to how our grandparents were in a relationship and how they got married and how everybody knew their position in a relationship back then, the way our great-grandparents. Is this what you think will save the Black communities and will create happier homes? Is this what you would like to see?
Yeah, look, in an ideal world, as a man, I'd say yes, but the reality is probably more than 60% of women are emancipated and have their own type of financial independence, right? So it would be near impossible for something like that to happen. And I don't expect that to happen, right? What I expect to happen in order to sort of fix a situation like this is for Black men and Black women to sit at a table and to just talk to each other, to be like, okay, this is what you do, this is what I do. This is our, fundamental, I don't like to call it roles and responsibilities, but these are our duties that we bring towards the household, and let's just agree on them right now. Let's find a common ground of agreement between the two of us, because it's never going to be a case of, like a traditional type of home where the man brings home 100% of the income and the woman.
Things have changed,
Things have changed immensely, and maybe it's a case of us re-looking at household duties and, breadwinning responsibilities. Or it's a case of us re-looking at the whole ideal of marriage, is a long-haul marriage still the way to do things? I've heard some people talk about, contractual marriages where after 2 to 3 years, people start, re-looking at renegotiating marriage contracts, for example. I don't know what the best solution is around it, but I would say the best way to start is for Black women and Black men to come to the table together and just start to talk, to be like, look, this is where we're both at. And in order for us to go forward, this is how I'm willing to, cooperate and agree with you going forward.
Okay, so there should be, earlier on you mentioned how they're independent women, and these are one of the things that is leading to, marriages within the Black community is not lasting longer. And I think earlier you also mentioned how it is the women initiating divorce. So are you saying if, as women, we can stop with this independence thinking and just come on the table with the guys or with men and just agree on what both sides will be happier with? Is this what you're saying?
Yeah, 100%. It's the only way, because things have changed so much. And it was quite weird because I was having this discussion as well with one of my other friends just around, things have changed, but the requirement from a lot of men still stays the same. Whereas a lot of men have been very, they've given a lot of leeway to women in terms of, their modern ways and the modern way that they operate. So it's known that, from a man's perspective, a woman looking at a man, that he needs to provide everything. Even if times have changed, he needs to still do everything, right? But on the coin to the other way around, things have changed immensely. Like men have given women a lot of leeway to be like, look, I don't expect you to do the cooking. I don't expect you to do the cleaning because you're modern, right? You do all the working and all of that stuff. So as I said, like that deal equation, it's starting to not make a lot of sense for men, but men have given a lot of leeway for it. Just going forward, yeah. It's been happening, yeah.
Yeah. I think there's something that you're probably not mentioning, and I think maybe you really want to mention. Would you like to say women should be more submissive to men than they are at the moment, because they are so much into this modern way of doing things that they are independent, as then they don't have the patience they don't have the patience when it comes to their husbands, that hence they would just file for divorce, like you indicated earlier. The statistics indicate that it is women that are initiating the divorce. So is this, have they lacked the patience? They're not as submissive as they should?
Yeah, and this is you're 100% correct in what you're saying, and it's a topic I want to divulge into a bit later, just in terms of hypergamy and all of that. But you're 100% correct in what you're saying, in that, and it's a point that I raised earlier on, in that women expect the traditional man, and they want to still be the modern woman, right? And it dwells from a lot of things, including the fact that modern day women don't really see the need to submit to a man as previously was the case in our parents' and grandparents' generation. Drastically impacted the long-term sustainability of the Black family, in the sense that, a Black woman 80 years ago in South Africa, and I'm just throwing a round number out there, but I'm trying to say before the Group Area Act was instituted, was very submissive to her husband, because she knew that her husband was, the protector and provider of that family. And she knew that her life was kind of at risk without a man at home. Whereas now that dynamic has changed over time, in the fact that, and this would be known from rural communities as well, where women are now more reliant on the state through provision of social security grant. And for the more independent women, they're more reliant on the boss that they serve through their salary that they get from them. So they'd rather be submissive to those two areas
than their husband,
than to their husband, right? Which for me is very crazy, in the sense that they still expect to get a husband that provides everything, and that husband is not going to get the benefit of doing all that stuff. So
makes sense. Let me make you just elaborate on this term you mentioned a little earlier on. You mentioned the hypergamy. So you speak of the hypergamy web when we were chatting the other day. Can you just explain this to someone who has never heard of this concept? What exactly is the hypergamy web, and also how is it taking place in Black communities? I think I kind of made you dive into this a little earlier, but you can just elaborate on this.
Yeah, thanks. So, before we get into the hypergamy web, which is just sort of a made-up concept from the term hypergamy, I want to divulge into the term of what hypergamy is. It's not necessarily a fiction or anything like that. It's a real thing that exists, and it's a genetic thing. So what it is, it's a genetical survival code that women effectively get into in order to find the mate that will give them and their offspring the highest probability of survival. So this has to do with something that I call the selfish gene, where we're all embedded with genes in our body, and the gene will do whatever it takes to survive. Picking the best option mate will not only secure a woman's survival, but will also secure the survival of her offspring, as well as them or the offspring having the best genes, right? So just to get more deeper into that, if we look at human history 500 to 1,000 years ago, survival meant what? Being able to find the strongest and the best hunter that would be able to, get the best prey, or get hunt the best animal and hunt the best prey, right? In this generation, it's about finding the strongest, fittest, and the wealthiest, because we operate in an economy based on money these days, and money is pretty much what dictates power, right? So the concept of hypergamy then is effectively a woman's natural instinct to select, to select the best partner that ticks all of those boxes that I mentioned, even if she's with someone else. Now going into what you asked, what's the web? Basically what the web is the fact that 90% of women, and this is all up to debate in your comment section, 90% of women will always look to select the top 5% of men because of that hypergamy spectrum. That 5%, about 3% aren't available because they're already married, they're probably gay, or I don't know, or they're incarcerated in jail. So that leaves about 2% of that 5% left for the 90% of women to select.
Yeah.
And I don't know, from my very poor knowledge of mathematics, that's probably a 1 to 10 ratio, right?
So it's a huge imbalance.
It's a huge imbalance, and the ratio is massively skewed to that 1 to 10, 1 man to 10 women of on that ratio, right? So how it affects all communities, not just Black communities, and is that a lot of women would think that they're settling by not getting that 2% of men. But what they don't realize, the 2% of men is likely to be polygamous because he's got access to another 10 women.
Of course, that is actually reality. Sorry, I'm going to have to say something here, but I'm actually agreeing with what you're saying because I mean, I'm a woman, and yes, I do meet guys out there, and to be honest, I have met like I think over 10 guys, and they want a polygamy. They are polygamist, and they would be like, yeah, you could just be the third wife. So that is true. And okay, so then you were saying that when a woman is settling for any other guy, but not the one within the 2%, was it the 2 or 3% you mentioned? When a woman is settling for all other guys, but they're not within the 2% of they ticking their boxes, they don't have all the monies that they want, they don't have everything else, but just a normal guy, they feel like they're settling. That's when they start saying, I can't settle for less. That's when that say start comes in, right?
Yeah, no, that's 100% correct. And it's very tricky conundrum because it's not that women do this stuff intentionally. You're not saying that, look, I want to be with the wealthiest guy, whatever. It's embedded in the gene to say that, look, I'm probably going to have a kid with this guy or a child with this guy. And there's most likely going to be a situation where for 9 months, I'm pretty much out. And I need to be able to be comfortable in the fact that this guy is going to be able to have the capacity and capability to be able to provide for me and my offspring while I'm still pregnant. And once this offspring is born, he needs to be able, or he or she as an offspring, needs to be able to have this man's strong genes in order to be able to survive and dominate this world. And just to go a bit more further into this, into how it affects the Black dating dynamic, for me, think about it as a twofold thing. Number one, it affects those communities in the sense that we need to look at average income data within South Africa. And I know it's a very tough ask for a lot of women to look at. But the income data in South Africa shows that the average monthly salary for a Black South African male is in and around the range of, I think it was 10 to 15,000 Rand a month before taxes, the last time I checked. So, and that's what an average man earns, not men that you know in your circle. When we just look at the mean of South African men. And what that means is that for the bulk majority of women, a lot of those guys have been taken out. I can't even talk about the number. It's probably 60% of men have been taken out. 50 to 60% of men have taken
because of what they're earning.
Because of what they're earning, right? The other dynamic is the fact that modern day women or women in this generation do very well for themselves from a financial perspective, right? And the other curse of hypergamy, which I call, is the fact that the modern day woman can never date or marry below herself. That's what hypergamy is. So if she's a woman and she makes 100,000 Rand a month, she's not going to ever settle down with somebody who makes less than that. It can happen in 1 or 2 instances. The relationship dynamic is going to be one where there isn't much of, as we said earlier, on the submission going on, the being able to, be the traditional wife for you to get a traditional man. It's going to be very difficult for her to be that traditional wife, no matter how much is possible, but it's going to be very hard.
I want us to touch on two things. This is just going to give the audience just like an overview, or rather actually a summary of what this conversation is really about, just to kind of like summarize everything. I think this will. You mentioned at the beginning that people, men and women, should just come on the table and talk about what is acceptable on both sides, something that both parties will leave the table happy, and that will actually save Black communities in terms of relationships and long-lasting marriages. Now, let's just maybe assume we are on this table. Then let's talk about the few men that we have that already we can't reach because like 2% and they tick all our boxes, but we can't talk about those because they do not really cover, the women on the planet, right? Let's look at South Africa, for example. Now, so that means we are looking at the rest of the men that are just probably earning like 10 to 15. I think you mentioned the salary is just the average man. It was 10 to 15,000 in rands in South Africa per month, I think, right?
Yeah, it might even be less than that.
Now, are you saying while we're on this table, should women then say, we will accept the average guys because the other men, we can't reach them. They are already taken and they can't meet everybody. So are you saying if women decide, let's not be looking at the salary, there's so many other things to look at. Are you saying we should find ways on how we could accept them as they are, and that will save the relationship? That's one. Is that will save our communities, and that will allow every woman to be in a happy relationship because they'll always just maybe find ways to live economically or, to survive. Like indicated, we live in a very financial demanding, society where without money, nothing much can happen. So are you saying as partners, we could find ways to survive, even though you're just earning as a man less than even 10,000 rand per month? That's one. And then now the second thing, if then we do that, if women say, you know what, we will accept them, we'll find ways. If that happens, are you saying it will prevent the guys that are the 2% from now having the ideas and thoughts of polygamy maybe as well? Because then maybe it's not an ideal thing, I don't know, but maybe that could be a debate for another day. But will that prevent those guys because the ladies will be then already taken? Because you mentioned earlier that they are now having this thinking of being polygamous because there's just so many women out there. And in my opinion, I also kind of feel like it also, just initiates cheating as well. But I think that's also another debate for another day. But there's just few guys and there's so many ladies available because those ladies don't want to take the average guys. Then they'll have so many skirts to take. You know what I mean?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for those questions. Very, very interesting questions. So on to your first point, you asked the question of what happens when men and women get back onto the table. Is it a case of, women having to quote unquote settle? I don't like the word settle, so I'm going to say quote unquote settle. Look, before I answer that question, I want to say that I always advocate for men to become the best versions of themselves. So that guy that's earning an average salary, if I were in front of him right now, I would tell him, look, you've got to do what you've got to do, and you've got to create more in this world, or create more value in this world in order to be the best version of yourself economically, right? In order to find the best mate and in order to provide for your family in the best and most efficient way. And from a woman's perspective, I always say the same thing as well. Be the best version of yourself as a woman, Try to be more feminine, try to be more, understanding, submissive of men. Try to just be a nice woman to be around for a man.
Yeah.
It's the same for men as well, right? But now to answer the question directly, from a man's perspective, I want to stress this point a lot, and it's a point that a lot of women don't understand, and even a lot of men themselves don't understand, is the fact that a man brings 10 times more to the table than just his wallet. It's a very, very contentious issue, especially in this day. But in terms of what a man brings to the table, it's the fact that in the middle of the night, if someone were to come with a gun to your head, right? Most men, I'm not going to say all, 80% of men would stand in front of you and take the bullet for you. In my mind, a man, you living with a man as a woman, brings you protection to your life. So your life is the most important thing. That's number one. Number two is that a great man will be a great influence, and he'll be a great mentor to a child that you have, right, one day. And he'll be able to, instill the right values, the right beliefs, the right kind of leadership, and to be the leader of the home that a child is able to see and admire, and be able to think that, look, one day I want to have the same situation for my family. And this is how I view a father. And this is what a man's role to society is, I think it's very important for everyone, men and women, because you have a lot of women that grew up in single parent households that don't understand what the value of a man is, The only thing they see a man is, because of all of those things that happened in apartheid and all of this stuff, the only thing they see a man is a financial person, somebody who brings money, but they don't see anything else because they never grew up with a man in their house. So to answer your question, it's that one aspect on its own. It's, or the two aspects that I mentioned is I want both men and women to be able to be the best version of themselves, number one. And number two is to understand what each of them are meant to do in the household. I mean, you get a lot of guys that were raised in single parent household where their mom was the breadwinner, right? And they don't understand what it is their role that they need to do when they become a father of a child, because they never had a father at home. So they take a lot of their guidance to what their mother said the father should be in their household, instead of actually seeing what a dad should have been in their household.
So what you're saying is that there is a lot that a man brings on the table, like, in a household, rather than just the money. And you mentioned the two things that they bring, but what you mentioned, it was really, okay, it's not just only the money or providing financially, but you mentioned about protection, which I think that is an important point. There is this say, I don't know if you're familiar with, I think it's from the Bible. It says that a man should protect, should provide, and should prophesy. So I think this is actually more like the traditional guy or the traditional man. And like you said, men, even though now we are living in a modern period, they are still doing that. And women actually do know. They would tell you that we want a man that can protect, provide, and prophesy. So I think this is your argument. You are saying that they do bring that and so much more. Therefore, we should not just look at what they are earning and whether they just average, right?
That's 100% correct. That is, I could not have emphasized that as more as you've said it. I mean, it's something as simple as, even, I mentioned a very extreme example with someone coming with a gun in the middle of the night. But for a single woman out there, right? Any single woman, and the ones in your audience will attest to this. The difference between you walking in the street or walking in the mall on your own versus when you're with an older brother or a boyfriend or a husband is astronomically different, right? In terms of people looking at you, people catcalling you, and all of these weird things that some of these men do. That stuff doesn't happen if you're walking with a man, because a man is willing to give another man enough respect to be like, look, that's his woman and he cannot disrespect that woman. And that's another dynamic that we need to talk about in terms of just how crazy that is in terms of just the modern day society, and more specifically in the South African context.
Yeah, great. Justin, I mean, the whole point of us having this conversation really is to give solutions, and that I know we are both so interested in just making a better society for all, particularly in Black communities, right? And that's why we are having these conversations, mainly just to give solutions to the problems that we are seeing. Although not everybody will probably pick it up as a problem. I guess it takes those that are really interested in this, in this, right? Like you are. So you mentioned how everybody, you would advocate for both men and women to be the best versions of themselves. And I think that is awesome. That is awesome. And do you think this will also then prevent some men being intimidated? I think the reality is that at the moment we are having women that are independent, and so they earn more than the average guys or the average men we touched on earlier on. So are you saying if the men can be the best versions of themselves, even if they're just earning an average salary, but they try to be the best as they can, they try to even seek to be financially stable or even better, they just continue and they're just ambitious and that they don't stop. Are you saying this will then prevent them from being intimidated? Because we do get guys that are intimidated by those independent women. And I've heard guys saying that I try to stay away from independent women. I can't deal. So are you saying if then people can just try to be the best version regardless of how much they're earning, this could be the solution?
Yeah, so I advocated from both ends of the spectrum, from a male and a female perspective. So from a male perspective, I say being the best version of yourself is you having the ability to create value in the world. Because what is it that drives a man? Any man in this world is driven by creating value in the world. That's where his happiness comes from. That's his divine purpose, is creating value in the world, right? And then from the other end of the spectrum, I say, okay, as a woman as well, you've got to be the best version of yourself, right? How is being the best version of yourself? And I know this is a very contentious answer I'm going to give, but being the best version of yourself is being able to your best capability, being able to cater to a man, because that's what brings you, or when I say you, I mean women in general, that's what brings them the most divine happiness, right? And it changes person to person, but I'm talking in terms of the general population, right? How do you become the best version of yourself from that aspect? It's very simple. Be more understanding, be more submissive, it's being agreeable, right? Don't be a type of person that likes to start fights and arguments over nothing. And most importantly, be a guy's peace, right? As most men, when they get home, they want it to be peaceful, right? They don't want to get home and then it's, a situation of fighting and all of this stuff. So from a female perspective, I say it's that, and the fact that, look, men are extremely, no matter how you want to look at it and how you want to talk about it and how you want to do this, but men are extremely visual creatures. And it's absolutely critical that from a female perspective, she needs to always be looking her best, even if she's deep within marriage. Whether that means she goes to the gym 3 to 4 times a week or whatever it is, right? That for me is a female being the best version of herself. From a male perspective, being the best version means being able to find the best ways to be able to create value out there, looking your best as well, going to the gym all the time, and focusing 100% on what it is that drives you, your purpose in this world and the value you create. So that's my solution, because you spoke about solutions earlier on, and it's for both parties to come together, be the best versions of themselves, even when they're married. It keeps them on their toes, because the moment off of those toes, it's now like, oh no, he's not the guy and he's changed. And from the other spectrum, it's, oh no. So those are very small things, but they affect relationships and marriage.
That's true. They do. I agree with you. And I think that's the best solution, really. And I like the fact that you also just elaborated on what you meant by both parties being their best versions of themselves. I like that, because I agree with you, because I think it will also prevent a lot of issues like cheating. I keep on mentioning cheating because from what I gathered is that most marriages, from the ones that I have been exposed to, as in from friends and people I know, not me, I was never married or divorced. But what I mean is the people that I've interacted with, they would say oh, he just cheated on me, I had to leave it, I had to leave him. So are you saying then, if maybe the everybody's their best versions of themselves, let's say maybe women keep fit, they just still look after themselves, like you said, men are visual people, then if they just continue to be visual, the women, that may also maybe prevent him being tempted to just go to someone else who
Now
appears to look better, maybe.
look, the answer to that is very tricky. It's not as simple as just saying yes to that one. And I'm very interested to hear your audience's comments and opinions on this. But the way that I think about it is, you know me personally, I'm a very much of a realist in terms of a person, right? In as much as I said that women are genetically hypergamous, unfortunately, men are genetically polygamous. To expand on this, why I say that is it goes down to something as simple as a menstrual cycle from a female perspective and a gestation period from pregnancy. So when we talk about it, one man can pretty much have a child every single day for a year. A man can have a child every single day in a year, and it makes no difference on his body and his composition. A woman can only have a child once a year, right? So I'm not advocating this to any men listening, and I'll never say that it's right, but men are not necessarily designed to have one sexual partner. Men just make the choice to have one sexual partner. And it's the same on the opposite end of the spectrum. Women are designed to look for the highest or the best type of partner. They just choose to stay with one partner. So ultimately, for me, the answer goes down to, as men, the moment you get married or the moment you decide to commit, make the right choice to someone that you're actually going to stick with through the hard times, through the best times. It may not be the person you love, right? With all your heart, because that stuff might not work, but it might be the person who just may be right for you in terms of your choice that you're going to stick with through the bad times, through the good times, as long as you just have a committed goal toward doing something. And again, I think the next question that's going to come to you is the fact that you're going to say, look, are you advocating that, men should cheat and women should stay around after men cheat? I'm pretty much 50-50 on that one, Amma. I would say that, look, if men do cheat, right, is it a reason to divorce a guy immediately? Because we know, looking through other communities, or through my little binocular, through looking at other communities, such as the Muslim community or the white community, that if people in those communities have been married for 20, 30 years, and for a fact, guys have cheated once or twice, right? It's just that you never hear of these stories because they're still together. Is one cheating or two cheating instances enough to purport a divorce? From my perspective, I can't say so, because the bulk of majorities are a result of one cheating instance. Is it enough for that? I can't say so. And I don't want to lie to you or your audience. But my opinion is that we run too quickly to things such as divorce after cheating instead of talking about it internally and how we're going to move forward. I mean, these days we just have such a short-term mindset, in terms of just something happens and it's not good enough for me. We
are quick to act.
We're just very, very quick to act in terms of that. And another solution, Amma, that I want to bring to the table, because I hear this is a solutionist forum here, is before any of this stuff happens, becoming the best version of yourself, all of this. In fact, it's part of that. Strongly, I advocate within the Black community specifically, mainly because of what apartheid did to our families, right? I'm a very big advocate in every single person out there. Even if you're dating, before you're getting into marriage, go to therapy, go see a psychologist, go understand what type of relationship style that you have, go understand if there's been any impact on you or there's any trauma that you faced growing up. Either it's in a single family household or whatever the situation was, maybe no parents at all, understanding how those traumas affected you, and affected your perceptions of, love, marriage, and all of that kind of stuff, before you get committed or before you get stuck with someone else. Because I think we've all been in this instance that, sometimes we've done the work in terms of therapy and understanding ourselves, but then the partner hasn't, or even vice versa.
Yeah, true.
And end up in those situations where, we always feel like we're the problem, because the person. So those three
I agree with you.
I mentioned: therapy, being the best version of yourself, and you take a big decision like marriage. Don't let something as small as cheating influence it. I would say personally, people have different opinions to this, but I don't know how you build the Black community, because it's going to be so difficult if for every 20 people that get married, say 12 of them are getting divorced after 2-3 years because one cheated. Can we not resolve our issues and, think about a way forward of automatically just divorcing? Because these problems are going to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. Till 50 years from now, we as Black people are still in the same position.
I agree with you. You mentioned earlier on how it is important to have to go to therapy and get to know yourself. I think it all stems from the importance of knowing yourself before you actually get committed and before you get into a relationship. You just have to know yourself as an individual. If it means going to therapy and just talk about anything you may have came across, maybe any childhood trauma or anything that's affected you, and obviously it has a big opportunity to show off or to show itself in the relationship. So I agree with you on that, the importance of just knowing yourself from both sides, right?
As a quick follow on to that, I think why I say it's that important is that you want to try to avoid a situation where it's a continuous, or it's just a constant loop of this happening where, it's a single parent tells their daughter or son this, and then next generation, and then next generation, and then next generation. And the problem with that is that you find a lot of men out there, and I know your audience will agree with me on this, that don't know how to be men, right? Because they were raised by women. And you get a lot of women out there that don't know how to be women for the men that they want, right? And it's so critical for both sides of the party to understand why it is that they have these fears, what's on this scarcity, it's either some kind of fear of scarcity internally that's telling them that, look, fuck, I'm not good enough, from both ends, right? Yeah. And it's driven by a trauma. And both people, male and female, especially in the Black community, need to find a way to be able to deal with it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm with you. I'm with you there. We have to find ways and we need solutions. Now, as part of the solutions here, just continue with our solutions of how do we make sure that modern day dating is not drastically affecting Black communities, which from what we have gathered, it appears that it is affecting Black communities drastically, and this is something that needs to be dealt with should we want to have happier, balanced homes for our Black children. So now let's talk about the overvaluing here, that there are people who tend to overvalue themselves in the dating market. Obviously, for you to get married, first, there's just first steps, right? You gotta start dating. And now if the dating is not happening and you are overvaluing yourself, that may obviously prevent the bigger picture, which is marriage, for those who are, who do believe in marriage. So why do you think people do overvalue themselves in the dating market, and how can we prevent this or reduce this?
Yeah, so, thanks for the question. It's actually quite an interesting one there. Look, when it comes to the dating market, especially in the modern dating market, as a result of your various social media apps, which have made it very easy for people to interconnect and meet various people online, thousands of different people online, there's something that what I refer to, I don't know if there's a psychological term, you might know more than I do, that I refer to called the choice paradox. It's something that for me, because there's two issues here, there's dating apps and there's social media apps. So the first is dating apps. And the choice paradox has pretty much ruined dating from my perspective, in the sense that from both ends of the spectrum, male and female side, a bit skewed towards the female side, in that people think that they have an unlimited amount of options, number one, when it comes to dating. And they think that all the options that they have on the online dating platform are options that would pretty much want them in terms of long-term commitment. And lastly, the choice paradox is the fact that there's too much to choose from. And with that too much to choose from, you can never, ever make a choice, right? So you end up meeting somebody, male or female, that ticks all of your boxes. And then 3 weeks later, it's like, oh no, this person is perfect, but there's somebody better online. From a male's perspective, there's somebody better looking. From a female perspective, there's a better overall kind of guy. I don't know how they look at it from that perspective. That's number one. And then from an Instagram perspective, obviously, people have gained numerous thousands of followers on these Instagram things, or Instagram and all these picture apps. And they get a bunch of men and women that like their pictures. And through that, they believe that, look, I'm at that level, I'm high at that level.
Got it.
This kind of over-exaggerated sense of self. So how that leads into the question that you asked me is, why do people think they overrate themselves? Purely based on that, number one. And number two, you'll go around asking, let's say, women the question of how would they rank themselves on a scale of 1 to 10. Most women, you'd know this probably from experience, but most women would say they rate themselves as an 8 or 9, right? And for me, that's very high in the spectrum. That pretty much says that, you put yourself in the same category as, I don't know, name somebody attractive, very attractive superstar on TV. I don't know who, right? That's right. To say that you put yourself in that category, that's fine, because that's how you see yourself. Yeah. But fortunately, the world and how the world perceives you is a secondary thing, right? And unfortunately, I don't like to say this, but there is such a thing as a universal beauty standard. Goes down to very simple things like symmetry in terms of how the face looks like, in terms of how things like the nose look like, in terms of, just jawline, etc. There's a certain... The way that I like to say it is, imagine you had a 1-year-old baby and you showed a 1-year-old baby 5 pictures of 5 different women, right? The woman who's a 10 in reality and the woman who's a 5 in reality. The child is automatically going to smile at the one that's a 5.
Of course.
It's just the way that it is. It has nothing to do with, us saying that one is more beautiful than that one. It has nothing to do with that, right? So there is a universal beauty standard. And what happens is, based on these social medias, dating apps, a lot of people, men and women, have got this much more higher perception of themselves. So people rate themselves 7, 8, or 9s. And they say that, look, they won't settle with somebody who's average based on that fact. So maybe a woman who's maybe a 5 in reality, an average looking woman, will think that she's above average looking and she's not going to settle with an average guy, And the reality is that, that's her perfect match. But she said, look, no, I'm based on these likes on Instagram, and based on my Tinder likes or Tinder matches, I'm definitely an 8, And that's what it is. That's why I think that it's definitely reduced, dating within the market. People
absolutely, and that's why maybe even today, then we are faced with. I remember the other day we were talking, Justin. You mentioned that we're going to have a pandemic, where a situation where there are just no women married, or maybe just 2% of the women are married, So I believe this overvaluing as well, it's a problem, because it's going to contribute to that, where women or even men, they just don't want to settle for what is at their exposure at that point in time, because they believe they deserve much more based on the rank they've put for themselves. They rank 100%. Themselves higher. Yes. So now you already touched on this. This was my last question to you, was on social media, and really it was just about what are your thoughts about the influence of social media, even including online dating? What are your thoughts of this in terms of the actual dating? But I think you touched on that a bit already, how social media is just also a contributing factor to allow people to just overvalue themselves. And as a result, they will just forever be single, because then whoever that they're meeting doesn't tick all the boxes. And it's going to be difficult. Is it ever going to be possible for them to find the boxes that they're looking for eventually and get them ticked?
Look, Amma, that's a very good question there. And I'm glad that you kind of aligned in terms of the way of thinking of what I'm thinking about as well. I mean, look, I would love your audience and subscribers to look at the situation of what's currently happening in Japan right now. So in Japan right now, you have a situation where there are women that are above 60 years old, or I think it's even 50 years old, that are pretty much living on their own and that are reliant on government spending or government social security, right? Because they didn't save enough for retirement, and now they don't have enough money to get on their day-to-day kind of living, right? And that's the kind of situation that I see going on. And I look at this from both perspectives. I look at it from a male and female perspective, but more from a female lens, because this has been happening to men for many years and many decades already. Like it's not rare to see a homeless man in his 70s or 60s on the road. I see that quite often, right? Especially in a South African context. But what you don't see is a lot of homeless 60-year-old women on the road, right? And that's my question that goes on next, or my statement that I'm going to say next is, if let's say you're a single woman and you're unmarried, right, after a certain point in your life, and you've decided to pick a career that from a monetary perspective is not going to give you enough for retirement, because from a retirement perspective, we've had this discussion before. I mean, I see that from 40 years from now, in order for you to retire comfortably, you'll need at least 10 to 15 million rand to be able to retire comfortably. If you're going to do that as a single woman, it's possible, but you need a job that's going to pay you exceptionally well throughout your life. You're going to need to get into some kind of entrepreneurial endeavor that's going to set you for life.
Absolutely.
Personally, I don't think the bulk majority of women are looking at it from that perspective. They don't really care, because they think that, look, the solution will come down the line somewhere. Maybe I'm going to have a child one day and that child is going to look after me. But we know the employment situation in the South African country, and we know how hard it is, right?
Yeah, the crisis.
It's an absolute crisis in the country. So, I mean, look, if you're a single woman right now and you're not looking in terms of your income and all of this kind of stuff in terms of how you're going to save up for retirement, unfortunately, your only solution is finding a man. I don't mean to sound very misogynistic, sexist, but it's the only solution you have. So you find a man who's at the same level as you, who's maybe at a similar type of career field as you. You guys build up a pot of retirement money and you guys retire together. You have economies of scale, retire together, build a life of retirement together. That's how it works in most communities. It's just not working like that in the Black community right now. So it's literally that simple. So what I would say is, what I'd advise to a lot of your audience is, look at the situation in Japan, look what's happening there, and how we avoid that in South Africa and in other nations where there's a lot of Black people as well, is for Black people to pretty much get together, just say that, look, this is where I am, this is where you are, right? Let's find a way for us to both work together, right? If we've done the therapy, it's possible. If we haven't done the therapy, maybe we should go back and do the therapy. But let's find a way to work together so that, we can build some kind of legacy for each other here. And we're not putting too much strain on future generations. Because you must remember what happens is, again, if we have too many single women, like let's say 60% of the women are single and they're in retirement and they're not earning an income, they're going to rely on the state. Where does the state get its money from? Taxes and debt. We're overburdened in terms of debt. So taxes are going to start getting hit. Our future generations are going to start having to pay more taxes in order to, take care of these people going forward. It's just a consideration,
Wow. Wow, Justin, this is very thought-provoking. I mean, which obviously this is the aim of our channel, of Amma and Peeps, is to share conversations like this that are just thought-provoking, and you've done just that today. And I am honored to have the opportunity to have a chat with you. You've just been amazing, and I really hope that the peeps, the world, the audience, they are going to listen and just take this seriously, because it's going to be a pandemic, and we need balance in life, and we need to also think of the economy and, like you said, the future generation. So this has been beautiful. I would like to thank you for your time, Justin. You've been amazing.
Thank you for having me on your show. Appreciate the time, and thank you for all your audience. I'm very, very excited to see what some of the feedback and commentary is. But yeah, I'm glad. I'm open to engage on any of these factors and anything else going forward. Yeah, appreciate the time.
Absolutely. So people can comment. People are welcome to leave a comment in the comment section below, and I know you wouldn't mind to just reply if there are any questions. We'll just make sure that happens. So thank you so much, Justin. And I would just like to say to the audience, if you enjoyed our conversation, my conversation with Justin, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, and also please just subscribe to Arma & Peeps if you have not yet done so. Just support the community, and we are able to reach more people and make a difference in a bigger way. So yeah, this is it from us. And until we see each other next time, take care and goodbye.